side event named Geneva and the Accountability SLP on Tamil Victims Perspective. As a short presentation, my name is Pinierzan Mananaton. I'm an international and European law student and member of the association Les Caribous Libérés. In the scheme of the 53rd session of the Human Rights Council, in partnership with the Global Tamil Movement, we have prepared this side event, which we decided to name Geneva an Accountability Project, has been mandated by the Human Rights Council in 2021 through its resolution 46/1 in order to gather evidence on abuses of human rights and related crimes in Sri Lanka. The scope of this mechanism has been clarified by the Human Rights High Commissioner's office. Following this clarification, officially the SLP mechanism consists of 4 tasks: collect, consolidate, preserve and analyze information and evidence of violation and abuses of human rights in related crimes committed in Sri Lanka. Second, develop possible strategies for future accountability process for gross violation and abuses of human rights or serious violation of international humanitarian law in Sri Lanka. Then the third, advocate for victims and survivors. And finally, support relevant judicial and other proceedings, including in member states with competent jurisdiction. Obviously, as a Tamil, and above all as a Tamil victim, there is a lot to say about this SLP mechanism. Many questions can also be raised as regards to the theoretical and practical aspect of the same mechanism. For instance, being one of the main objects of our side event, what place do the victims and their voice what place do the victims and their voice have in this mechanism? Does the Tamil diaspora play a role in this mechanism? In order to answer to those questions, we, the Association Les Caribous Libérés, in partnership with the Global Tamil Movement, invited several speakers coming from different countries who made us the honor to be here and participate to our side events. Their experience and thought are precious to our subject. So without any delay, let's present our first speaker. Ms. Subhashini Bobet, a human rights activist coming from Switzerland. She also works as an interpreter. In that way, she is frequently in touch with the refugee and asylum seekers. So I'll let you go.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, colleagues, for giving this opportunity to share my experiences.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you, moderator, and thank you, colleagues, for giving this opportunity to share my experiences as a human rights activist and the interpreter for Tamils, asylum seekers in Switzerland. For a people in the throes of multiple existential crises, Geneva no longer seems as urgently gripping, nor evocative of either patriotic protestation or demands for justice and reparation. War crimes, accountability, and the like seems like yesterday's news for a Tamil nation standing in queues for its tables. Sri Lankan government on its politics to change the Western country's mind misleads the facts on its genocide against Tamils in Tamil's homeland. While currently food insecurity, breakdown in the provision of gas and electricity and US dollars related anxieties preoccupy the masses. There's nothing like the same interest with which the sessions of the UN Human Rights Councils are usually greeted. On that crucial time, international community totally ignore Tamils' plights on the justice against genocide and on their rights to self-determination, which is totally punishable by Sri Lankan security forces, who are using systematically violence against Tamils for over last 45 years. after Mullawaikal genocide, Sri Lankan security forces are continuing to deny systematically the 46/1 resolution. The post-war restitution of land back to Tamil civilian owners made limited progress. Large swaths of land remain occupied by the military without compensation paid to Tamil landowners. Although Sri Lanka supported recommendations to get international financial support, the reality is Sri Lankan Tamil continues to suffer under the Sri Lankan security forces occupation. There was no accountability for human rights abuses or crimes of genocide against Tamils by Sinhala during the war period or for more recent violations such as threats against and intimidation of Ilam Tamils, especially Tamil human rights defenders and journalists, despite Sri Lanka's commitments to address accountability. Former presidential commissions of inquiry reports were not made public. A new commissions of inquiry on human rights and international humanitarian law violations was set up in 2021 to investigate allegations. However, its findings have not been made public, nor have they led to any prosecution of those responsible. Another commission appointed to investigate political victimization reversed limited accountability gains on some cases. Office on Missing Persons, which an eye watch for international community and Ilam Tamils victims of genocide don't have faith on domestic process. Since the 20th Constitutional Amendment changed the appointment process, the OMB has been staffed with individuals who have raised alarm bells amongst victims groups. The list of missing persons were deleted from the OMB's website and the website has been taken down. Victims now fear that any correspondence with the OMB will lead to them being forced to accept the death certificate. Issuing interim relief and certificates of absence has also halted. For an example, Prevention of Terrorism Act, the PTA reminds in use 19th March 2022 amendments that included reducing the pre-charge detention period from 18 months to 12, failed to address critical gaps of the law which requires repeal and substantial amendment to bring it in line with international law and standards. The Act allows for suspect to be held without charge for up to 12 months. The Minister of Defence to make order restricting freedom of expression and association with no right of appeal in courts. Provides special rules of evidence allowing for confession to be admissible in court and for the onus to be placed on a suspect to prove to a court that the statement was made under duress. Freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. Space for dissent has closed dramatically since the previous review, with police, criminal investigators, human rights defenders, lawyers, opposition, parliamentarians, trade unions, student activists, all targeted by the state in reprisal for their work. The government and government-affiliated groups have used smear campaigns, harassment and other forms of intimidation, raiding media outlets and questioning journalists, travel bans, transfers and arbitrary arrests to control freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. The situation of Ilam Tamils under occupation has deteriorated with occupation of Ilam Tamils lands by Sri Lankan security forces. Discrimination fast forming a part of state policy. Tamils don't have right to mourn the death of their loved ones. For last 3 years, close to 5,000 Tamils were arrested using the PTA and emergency regulations, and for many of them were under sexual harassment. Sri Tamils continued to be harassed in the highly militarized northern province, where they were repeatedly prevented from memorializing their loved ones forcibly disappeared. Multivital remembrance of victims of genocide or killed during the 26-year-long war which ended in 2009, post-war land restitution halted. Accountability for wartime serious violations of human rights and humanitarian law was not pursued, and in some cases which implicated members of the military or government supporters, the suspects were either acquitted, the cases were withdrawn by the Attorney General, or a convicted perpetrator received a presidential pardon. These include the enforced disappearance of Tamil activists, the assassination of Joseph Pararajasingham in 2005, the charges against Vasantha Karanagoda in the disappearance of 11 Tamils in 2008 and 2009, and the 2020 pardon of a perpetrator in the Mirusuvil Massacre case. We call upon United Nations members, states and other affiliated UN agencies to adapt as a matter of utmost urgency the following measures. Recognize the genocide resolution passed unanimously in the Northern Provincial Council of Sri Lanka on 10th of February 2015. Secondly, direct appropriate measures at the International Criminal Court outlining that the affected Tamil people have no faith in any domestic commission or inquiry. Third, United Nations Human Rights Council members to have a new resolution under Agenda 4 to appoint a special reporter to monitor and investigate ongoing human rights violations and repression against the Ilam Tamils. We need to have a special session at Human Rights Council on Sri Lanka for refer the Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court by Security Council. And I thank you again for this opportunity and appreciate your attention this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Subhashini Robert. You explained well the situation, the actual situation of human rights in Sri Lanka, especially of Tamils human rights. And I would like to add something. You referred to, you mentioned UNHRC, and this is actually a good example of the way that Sri Lanka is trying to hide the problem, trying to, how to say, to not be accountable for its action, because the name of this institution that they put in place is Office of Missing Person. But actually we are talking about enforced disappearance. They are not missing, they are enforced disappearance. They are being disappeared in the custody of Sri Lankan authorities. So I just want to add this example to show how the Sri Lankan states try to hide the problem and not to be accountable for its action. So thank you very much for your words and presentation. Then let's go to the second speaker, Mr. Lakshman Sanjeev from Sri Lanka, Chief of Mission, International Mission for Refugee and Legal Advisor. So let's do you.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the Association of Caribous Libérés and Global Tamil Movement for this great opportunity. It was with a great concern that I stand before you today to address the issues of the current human rights situation in Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan government has an absolute responsibility to protect the rights of its own citizens, but unfortunately it has failed to do so in many instances, resulting in serious violation of human rights in the island, including alleged war crime allegations. The government's action have included a range of abuses, including extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, torture, and arbitrary detention. These violations have had a devastating impact on the lives of Sri Lankans, particularly those belonging to minority groups. The government's failure to address these abuses has resulted in a climate of impunity, where perpetrators of these crimes are not held accountable for their actions, and they keep enjoying their impunity in an international assemblies. As a member of the United Nations, Sri Lanka has a strong obligation to uphold the principle of human rights as laid out in the international law. These principles include the right of life, liberty and security of person, freedom of expression, and freedom from torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. The Sri Lankan government has signed and ratified several international human rights treaties, including the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which obligates the government to respect and protect the human rights of all individuals within its jurisdiction. Despite these obligations, the Sri Lankan government has failed to take concrete steps to address human rights abuses and hold those responsible accountable. Sri Lanka was going through a very dark period in its history, economically and politically. And due to the government's failure to find solution, it used existing laws in an anti-democratic manner to suppress the voice of the people. As recently the Meenakshi Ganguly, the South Asian director, quoted, "For many years the victim of past abuses in Sri Lanka demanded justice, while successive governments have broken promises, blocked accountability, and promoted those implicated in war crimes to high office. The UN Council should adopt a resolution on Sri Lanka that presses the government to uphold the accountability and the rule of law. It is imperative that the international community holds Sri Lanka accountable for its actions and pressures the government to respect the human rights of its citizens. That includes supporting the work of human rights organizations and independent media and calling for an end to impunity for those who commit human rights abuses. In 2021, the Human Rights Council mandated through Resolution 46/1 the creation of an unprotected new mechanism on Sri Lanka, authorizing the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to gather evidence on abuses of human rights and related crimes in Sri Lanka. The UN calls it the Sri Lankan Accountability Project. They are careful not to capitalize all the words. If they did and turn into a habitual UN anagram, it would be spelled SLAP. Indeed, it was when it was the resolution creating SLAP was passed last year in the face of protesters by the government of Sri Lanka delegation. As my friend moderator has mentioned earlier about the 4 main tasks of the SLAP. The task that is the last one, support relevant judicial and other proceedings, including in member state with competent jurisdiction, that the last one needs to take note of. If any state with competent jurisdiction initiates legal proceeding, SLAP will provide the evidence it has gathered in support of that effort. This will make the significant difference to any state considering such a move, and the evidence itself will be treated with due seriousness since it comes from the United Nations agencies. It is very important to know that as victims of the genocide war in Sri Lanka, from the north and east of the island, it's vital that SLAP team have to work closely with the victims living overseas. For the last 25 years, over 1 million Tamils flee Sri Lanka due to fear of persecution, and most of them are living in European countries. So the team should have ways of bridging mechanisms with this community and victims of war to work in collaboration with. In conclusion, I urge the United Nations and the other multilateral organizations to take immediate and concrete strategies to monitor and address the ongoing human rights abuses in Sri Lanka, and to demand Sri Lankan government fulfill its international obligations. I also request the High Commissioner of Human Rights to look for a possibility of appointing a special rapporteur designated to Sri Lanka. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laxmanan Sanjeev, for your explanation and the way that you put forward the fact that victims have to be in the center of the mechanism, So thank you very much for your contribution. Without any delay, let's pass to the final speakers. Ms. Nishanti, a translator in Polish. So she usually works with refugee and asylum seekers coming from Sri Lanka. So she is aware of what is happening there, all the violations which are there. And she's also the General Secretary for Global Tamil Movement. So we worked a lot together in many projects. So thank you for your presence, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emerson, for your nice introduction. Yes, I have had the honor to share many platforms with Council members double standard regarding the way to treat the Multicultural genocide, which is actually the last genocide of the modern world that was committed by the Sri Lankan security forces against Tamils. The SLAP is a little progress, very rapid, little tiny progress towards justice in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, past reports from High Commissioner and the Special Procedures Mandate Holders reports of Sri Lankan genocide against again and again is a total failure of justice for Tamils, victims of genocide in Sri Lanka. As usual, the civil society from the south continued to mislead Tamils into transnational justice process in Sri Lanka. And countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, France, and other human rights council members continue to ignore who the victims are of Sri Lanka, of genocide in Sri Lanka. Now I'd like to address to Mr. Volker Turk, the newly High Commissioner of this Human Rights Council. I just want to point out that Sri Lanka is currently suffering an economical, political, human rights crisis. In recent months, countless people have taken to the streets to call for reform, accountability for corruption, and for urgent government action to protect their rights, their rights of freedom of expression and their rights in general. As former High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet made clear in her report to the Human Rights Council that current situation is due in part to long-standing problems of, I'm quoting her words, deepening militarization and lack of transparency and accountability in governance, which have embedded impunity for serious human rights violations and created an environment for corruption and abuse of power. End of quotation. Successive Sri Lankan governments have repeatedly failed to fulfill their pledges made at the Human Rights Council and elsewhere. That is, to end the abuses, protect the human rights, and provide for accountability and redress it. The former High Commissioner's report notes that Sri Lankans came together from various socio-economic, cultural, ethnic, and religious backgrounds in a mass protest movement to demand greater transparency, accountability for corruption, and economic mismanagement, and increased participation in democratic life. End of quotation. Unfortunately, the present High Commissioner and the former High Commissioner continue to ignore who the victims are in Sri Lanka. And the international community continue to deny justice and any technical assistance to the Tamil victims who are continuously victims of genocide in Sri Lanka. The victims and their family members continue to face Sri Lankan occupying military harassments in daily basis. I want to use this opportunity to express my experiences about the genocidal war affected Tamil, 11 Tamil women by Sri Lankan security forces. The reports we have from the ground are alarming. For the last 2,400 days, Tamil women who are protesting day and night in all 8 districts, even if they have Sri Lankan police and military threats, are alarming us, giving us reports with alarming facts. All leaders from all 8 districts are facing systematic Sri Lankan military harassments. I'm speaking about all leaders because they are grouped as associations. So we have one leader for each district as they are formed into an association. And all the 8 districts leaders, the women, are facing continuous harassment, and even they are molested by the police and security forces. They are violated by the Sri Lankan security forces. They received court orders not to protest, and the Sri Lankan police make fake false charges against them. Sri Lankan Police Terrorist Investigation Department continue to visit them regularly. So what is Sri Lankan Terrorist Investigation Department to do with the borders? It is completely an illegal situation. For the last 12 months, more than 278 mothers were attacked in peaceful protests just because they are fighting to get their the news of their enforced disappeared people, not the missing person as the message said, but enforced disappeared people. And more than 200 people were injured by the Sri Lankan security forces during these peaceful protests. Those Tamil women need technical assistance by the human. Until now, they don't even have the possibility to register the association legally, duly, according to the Sri Lankan legal system. So the Association of Relatives of Enforced Libérés, that we call the Association of Relatives of Enforced, not as a beneficiary, not as like OMP, like Office of Missing Person. They want to call themselves Association of Relatives of Enforced Libérés. They're not even allowed to be called as relatives of enforced libérés. For the last 15 years, over 5 organizations from the south of Sri Lanka take information to more than 20,000 Tamils in north and east of Sri Lanka on their relatives who were enforced libérés, and until now, none of their cases were presented to the Committee on Enforced Libérés in Sri Lanka. The Tamil families of the disappeared have faced surveillance and harassment by Sri Lanka security forces in an attempt to silence their pursuit for justice. We highlighted that the protesters encounter severe threats and harassments, while some of the leading protesters are under constant surveillance. That justice is continuously denied. Many of the parents who have been participating to the roadside protests are elderly and vulnerable. Since the beginning of the protest, 178 parents have passed away without knowing the truth about their disappeared children. And for this, I have a little incident when one of the mother who was dying in the bed of her death was saying to her colleagues, I'm going to die, but when my son comes back, please tell him that till the last breath, your mother was looking for you. 2,200 days on, the demands and their vigor for justice remains the same appeal to the international community. Since the campaign for justice began, families have maintained a set of simple demands. So we have 7 demands that they are asking for. It is to release a list of serenties from the final phase of the armed conflict, that is to know if by any chance they find the name of their sons or husbands, to investigate and release a list of all past and present secret detention centers, to release the yearly list of detainees under the Prevention of Terrorism Act since 1978, and we asked the Committee on Enforced Appearance to have a special we asked them to have a special committee on enforced appearance to have a special session. We request to the core group countries to have a country-specific reporter. We need referral of enforced appearances to the ICC, that is the International Criminal Court, and we asked the Swiss and European Union authorities to support Tamil women victims of enforced appearances and to facilitate them to access to the Human Rights Council mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nishanti, for your explanation about the case of enforced disappearance, and especially the situation of families of enforced disappeared persons. In that case, I would like to add something, is that, underline something, is that Sri Lanka remains the second highest number of enforced disappearances. I think it's important to underline this fact. And it's from many associations, international associations, among which there is Amnesty International. So thank you very much for your explanation. And as you can observe that the human rights situation in Sri Lanka, for example, is not settled. It's actual violations are current, frequent by the Sri Lankan states. This is something that we would like to put forward, and so we'd like also to question ourselves about the mechanism that the UN put forward that creates that could be a mini resolution that Sri Lanka do not respect, or a mechanism like the SLAP, where we question ourselves on the place of the victims and their voice. And so, thank you very much for your presence. And again, of course. And so, if you have any question about the case or the situation, please. Oh, yeah, please, sir.
Don't you think that if you had called this meeting Human Rights in Sri Lanka and the gender and climate issue, the room would be full, because we have 15 people in this room, because there is little glory to be collected in attending I don't know in which order to raise my question, but maybe other people in the room would like to. Tamils suffered horror in Sri Lanka. I am not here to distribute the certificate of merits and crime. But in Switzerland, where we have a lot of refugee discussion, Tamils do not exist. They have a very low profile, they never complain, and we never try to help them. So what is your perception of that issue, whose fault it is, if there is a fault? The other day I was attending a party in Parc des Cropettes, a public park. It was a Sri Lankan festival. I was silly enough not to ask if there were also Tamil groups. I think they were all Ceylonese groups. It's okay, they may do so, but it would be interesting to know if when Sri Lanka comes and advertises about its nice culture and tourism, etc., it is for Ceylonese only or for all Sri Lankan. That is something. You speak French, and I assume you don't live very far from Geneva, so maybe you could investigate. At Place des Nations, so we have some monuments for genocide. One about the. So, of course, if all groups who have suffered thousands of casualties would apply for monument, it's not feasible. But still, you should explore the possibility. At least there would be one place where Tamils would be heard of. That's basically, and maybe I will tell you something which will shock you and you will throw me out of the room, is as a citizen of Europe who have vaguely followed the development of civil war in Sri Lanka, it is sure that the radicalism of the Tiger had gave me a bad perception of their cause. Because I remember the day when I read in the newspaper that the Tamil Tiger had slaughtered all the leaders of the other Tamil parties, rightly or wrongly, but this remains in my memory. And when they blew up Rajiv Gandhi, which they may have the reason, but it was not the best public relation initiative they did. So, of course, this also explains why there is surely not hostility in the European public vis-à-vis the Tamil cause, but when a cause grows too complex, the public just turns his eyes to a more simple issue. And so that's all I had to say. I don't know if it's a question, but maybe you could react to this low profile of Tamils in Europe. We hear a lot about Kosovo, we hear a lot about those from Syria, we have a lot of categories, but Tamils we never hear of them.
Thank you, sir, for your words and your questions. So the first question was about the title.
No, I was just making fun because it's an insignificant cause, and in the human rights community, if you are not trendy and if you cannot pose for that nice picture which will go on the headline, then nobody is interested.
Unfortunately, that is the case. But we want to stand with our subject.
Just before this meeting, the room was full because it was about some kind of new convention for human rights defenders. So everybody is pressing to be on the front row.
Concerning this subject, if I may add some points, thank you for very much for your concerns about how Tamil should make noise.
Not necessarily noise, but more articulate, more present.
Yeah, you're completely right. I'm right with you because Tamils are all around the world, as we say. Tamil is not that Nadi, Tamil people Nadi, that means the translation is there's no, not one state where there's no Tamils, but there one single country for Tamil. There is no Tamil land for us. That's why we are here. Because
Yes,
we
you
are
have Tamil Nadu.
Tamil Nadu, but it is not a nation. Tamil Nadu is not represented in the United Nations. It is a part. It's part of India.
It's part of the European Union. They are not totally independent, and they cannot put forward the Tamil subject as far as they would and they want.
So you were pointing many things why Tamils are not complaining. That is exactly the question of the global Tamil movement. We are inviting all the Tamils to complain to the system, into the United Nations systems, because we are all complaining that even our subject is the failures of the UN mechanism. Of course, UN is continuously failing us, but at the same time, Tamils are also failing the United Nations system also, I would say, because the system is much complicated, and we have to find ways to exist. Because Tamils, we have been constantly, we are undergoing this genocide from a long time ago. For example, from Ravana period, that means from the Ramayana, the story of the epic god Rama, who is now depicted as the god, and Ravana is now the Tamil king, who is now made as a demon. So this demoniac version of Tamils, as you said, now LTT is being demonstrated as, is pointed out as the demoniac faith because they have killed Rajagandhi. But who said it? I mean, we have any proof that LTT did it. So it is just, we are portrayed as terrorists, and the LTTE, when they were governing the north and east part of the Sri Lanka, we had like we say, Niralaras. That means we had our dream country, which is the Tamil nation. Tamililam, we are reivindicated till now. We had it properly, and we had the courts, we had proper police, we had proper bank, we had proper education, and one woman could go out at midnight with all jewels on, and we were not feeling no safety. But now, even the single women, single people are calling out for Tamil, the Prabhakaran, who is the leader of LTT, and they say even the existence of LTT would be even more protective for the Sri Lanka itself, because now what's happening is Sri Lanka itself is under attack. We don't speak about Sri Lanka now, it's Sri Lanka, because it is under the control of China. So the geopolitics is like that now. But we have failed the entity, or does the entity has failed this world? I don't know, but the system is such. So because we are pointed out as terrorists, but we are not terrorists, because we are not fighting for that the other one should not exist. We want to exist like you and her and him and her. We want to study like other people. So
Maybe just a very short add-on. I do not advocate that you make noise or that you complain. This is not necessarily good for the identity of a minority. And here at the Palais, there has been every year some events on. But if you go to the street, at least in Switzerland, I think it is the case in most European countries, and you ask them, what are the great victims of the past 20, 30, 50 years, what nation has suffered? They would list 20 nations before, or maybe not even mentioning the Tamils. So I think that at least in terms of memory and history, you are being a little bit outside of the paysage, a bit forgotten.
I want to say you are totally right, but maybe because it's a recent event, we can say it was ended in 2009.
And Syria.
Genocide, but it's continuous with there's a structural genocide, you said, but
and the structural genocide, excuse me to cut you, it's also we are being genocided physically, but also in our mind, and we are constantly asking the question who we are. For example, myself, I came to France at the age of 8, so I don't know anymore who I am now. Because am I a French? Because I am a French citizenship, I'm a French person. But I am losing my identity. So there is this, by structural genocide, there are 10 phases of genocide. And Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan deep state is doing from the ages of Ravana to the age of now. They are doing the structural genocide one by one, place by one, because they are, they are deleting us on the surface of the world. At the same time, they are also deleting our existence in a ideological way. So we are now questioning: are we doing right? Are we doing wrong? How shall we move? So we are like losing our faith in the system, and we are struggling to give hope to the people, to say that please don't lose hope in the UN system, because this deal, this new deal, I mean this setup of the world will may change, and we cannot wait until that changes. We have to bring the change. We have to bring the new deal. So that's what we are doing with the global movement, and I invite you friends to join with us, hands in hands, to make the change. Not only for Tamils, but for all the people who are like us, fighting for self-determination. I'm speaking about the Kurds, I'm speaking about the Western Sahrawis, all the people who are fighting for their self-determination. What is self-determination? Is to determine what myself is. It's as simple as that, and I invite you to make peace with us, to change the world.
Thank you, sir. Actually, you mentioned a lot of struggle, thousands of struggle, and things that we can speak a lot for hours, especially about the Caribous, about the Tamils' rights since 47 or even more, and now, and the role of Tamils in Europe, what they are doing, why they are why they are silent. We can talk about a lot of for long hours, but unfortunately, we have to end this event at 6. So we can continue our discussion other. Or if there is one question or 4 minutes, it will be short, but we can try to answer to your eventual question. Thank you. Okay, so there is no question. So thank you very much for your presence. It was an honor for us to speak about that. And so let's meet on other events if possible.
We have another. I just remind you that we have, as my NGO, which is Association of Mutual Tamil of France, we have another event during this session, which will be held in the same room on the 10th of July. So I invite you to be with us. With many more. Maybe we shall maybe add the climate change word, something like that.
10th of July.
Yes, 10th of July will be here again. Thank you, sir, for your
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please, ma'am. You have 5 minutes. So let's proceed.
Okay.
It's good. You can.
வணக்கம், தமிழ் தான் பேசுகிறேன்.
Oh.
உங்களோட அன்பான வேண்டுகோள் என்னென்னா, நீங்கள் சொன்னீங்க தமிழர்கிட்ட ஒரு நாடு இல்லை, தமிழன் இல்லாத நாடு இல்லைன்னு. இப்போ
I'm
நான்
doing this good in this translation. She says, I was saying that there is no other country, there's not any countries where there is no Tamil, but there is not country for Tamil.
இன்னைக்கு நீங்கள் 4 பேர் ஸ்பீக்கர்ஸ் இருக்கிறீங்க. ஏன் ஒரு ஆள் தமிழில் பேசியிருக்கக்கூடாது?
So we
என்னடா
have
எங்கே நாங்கள் அவ்வளோத்துக்கு ஸ்டாண்டர்ட் தான், தமிழில் இங்கிலீஷில் கதைக்கிறதுக்கோ இல்லை வேறு லாங்குவேஜ் ஃப்ரெஞ்சோ அந்த அளவுக்கு இல்லை. இப்போ நாங்கள் நீங்கள் கதைக்கிற எல்லாம் விளங்குவோம்னா, நாங்கள் ஒரு சாதாரண ஒரு பொதுமகளாக நீங்கள் கலந்து வரலைங்க. 4 பேரில் ஒரு ஆள் தமிழில் பேசியிருக்கலாமே.
So you are here, 4 people here, you all Tamils, why didn't you do interventions in Tamil? Maybe the moderator has the answer, unique answer, which is very long.
The fact is that we are in an international organization, and there's a lot of people that want to understand what we are saying. And unfortunately, there's no any Tamil translator for French or English, so we cannot talk in Tamil.
காரணம் என்னன்னு சொன்னால், ஐநாக்குள்ள வந்து 6 லாங்குவேஜ் தான் ஒஃபிஷியலாக ரிலீஸ் பண்ணப்பட்டது. அதில் எதிர்பார்ப்பு அதனால நாங்கள் வந்து மொழிபெயர்ப்பு செய்யலாம் மொழிபெயர்ப்பு செய்யறதுக்கு இப்போ நாங்கள் மொழிபெயர்ப்பு இவங்க மொழிபெயர்ப்பு செய்யறாங்க நாங்கள் இங்கே இருந்தால் அது வந்து மொழிபெயர்ப்பு செய்யலாம் அவங்களுக்கு அப்போ அதுக்கு தான் எங்களுக்கு கண்டினியூஸாக எங்களோட உதவிகள் தேவைன்னு நான் கேட்குறோம் நிறைய தமிழர்கள் இங்கே வந்தாங்கன்னா நாங்கள் இந்த வேலை செய்யணும் வேறு ஆட்கள் கலந்து கொண்டாங்கன்னா எங்களுடைய வேலையான மொழிபெயர்ப்பு வேலையை நாங்கள் அங்கே இருந்து உங்களுக்கு தமிழில் சொல்லி கொண்டு இருக்கிறோம் எங்களுக்கு ஆர்வம் சாரி ஃபார் திஸ்
I think we don't have any time, so thank you for your question, for your participation, and for